Alright, well, we're back on the little COLT here with a bad computer. And what I'm finding is what I suspect is one of these injectors, this injector number 2. By putting the Noid light on there, as I showed you in my other video, it didn't flash. The rest of them did, but the number 2 did not flash. So I went through and showed you how to check that with Kirchhoff's law. And anyway, so what I suspect has happened is I've got an injector here that basically I think is shorted out intermittently. And the reason why I say that is because if you remember in the last video, the red wire is powered and the other wire is a ground that goes to the PCM or ECM, or basically the computer. So basically what I'm thinking is that this intermittent injector shorting has caused 12 volt power to go through here and loop in and go to the PCM, and it shorted out the injector driver. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change all these injectors, and then also the customer wants to put a new timing belt on there while we're there. So that's going to be what we're going to do with this. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I've got the bolts, the 2 bolts that hold the fuel log or fuel rail. I've got those pulled out, and the fuel rail is a little bit loose here. So I'm going to use a flatbed or a flathead screwdriver to pry up each injector. Now I want to pull each injector off of the manifold and not out of the log just yet. So we'll pull these real careful like. And that way you can see kind of where that log's going. And then what we'll do is we'll take each injector has a clip on it. We've got to get each clip off of there. And they pull off, and this is basically what there is. I'll bring this up and show you. This is an injector clip right here. And that basically holds the injector to the fuel rail. And then once that's off of there, then we're going to take our shop rag, we're going to absorb some gas, and we're going to get down in here, and we're going to slowly pull this injector off. Now these might be a little bit stuck because they've been on here since 1991 or so. Alright, so we've got a little fuel draining out right there. Now we don't want that fuel to go down into the intake manifold, because if we do, we risk not only hydrolocking the engine, but also to flood the system. And I don't really want to flood it and then have to clear it out because it's got brand new spark plugs in it. So anyway, that's one of the injectors. And what they have here on these are the new injectors, and they've changed the design slightly, but I'll show you how this looks. And basically you're going side by side. The orange one is the new one and the yellow one is the new one, and they do line up the same, but they have a little different pintle on them. Each one is a little bit different, and they do that for greater atomization. This pintle right here will atomize the fuel quicker, and this one you can see the pintles up inside there, right there, and that it does atomize the fuel okay, but these are just a little bit better. So, and then we've also got, you see the seal right here. I'll have to dig that one out of the manifold. There's also a spacer that fell down right there, and that goes in between the log itself and the intake manifold. And there's one on this side too, and I'll just go ahead and get it out of the way just so that it doesn't decide to fall on the ground. And that's what that is. So now what I can do is I'll get a little pick tool and pull that O-ring out. And a little bit of stuff on it. So I've got a little round hook type tool, as you can see. And I'm going to reach down inside there and I'm going to peel that out. But I want to get a good grip on it because I don't want to lose it or lob it all over the place. And there it is. That's the O-ring that goes on the old injector. And now the new injector is going to go in the same way. But what I do on these a lot of times is these areas right here is I'll put a little bit of oil or a little bit of grease on each one of these O-rings so they don't pinch and so they don't cause me problems going back in. Now what I use with that is, this is just a little cup that I found maybe at the dollar store or Walmart or something, and what I've done basically is I think these are just little jewelry cases or something. I filled this one with grease and I drilled a little hole in the top of it, and then I'm using a that basically is just a Q-tip with a wooden handle on it, and a regular Q-tip would probably work, but it gets soaked in grease over time. And basically, so I just put a little bit on there and I'll wipe a little bit around my finger, and I'll do a little bit here on this O-ring as well, and then put that back in there, and that keeps that pretty much dust free. And then like I say, this goes back in here and that pretty much snaps into place, and then I'll just keep on going. Now these injectors, these unplug pretty quickly, but here's the thing. These other injectors, I snap those back on, and what they have is they've got a, let's see if I can get it off and show you. I use a lot of these long-handled pick tools. These are pretty handy for getting into little areas. I have such fat fingers that it's hard to get in and out of there sometimes. Off. They're a little fiddly to get off. You got to be kind of careful with them too. You don't want to break them or bend them. There we go. That's what that is, a little keeper. And then it pops off. And what that keeper does, see, there's some of these connectors you'll see that they're a whole lot easier. You just push the piece of wire down, but on this one what happens is this keeper goes in this hole here, and it basically is, it's kind of bound by that. Let me show you. They are quite fiddly, and just remember, this is probably the first or maybe the second year that this particular vehicle came out with fuel injection. So 1990s, early 1990s, they came out with these things, and they were somewhat archaic. What I might have to do is plug it into the injector to get that on there straight, because it's going to be a bit fiddly. So anyway, I'll just keep rolling on here. And I always, especially with aluminum, where we're mounting into aluminum, I like to put a little bit of grease on these threads. A lot of times just because they go in a little bit easier, but they also add some protection against corrosion, which is always a good thing. Yeah, I got the old Milwaukee fuel. We'll go in real easy like. Make sure it looks good. Yep. And then we'll get all these plugged back in. I'll get my wires put back on each one of these injector plug-ins. And we'll go from there.